The air inside the cockpit is cold, yet sweat beads on the forehead of Major Carroll C. Smith, stinging his eyes as he stares into the infinite, suffocating blackness of the Pacific night. It is 23:40 hours on December 29th, 1944. The location is the ink-black skies over Mindoro, Philippines. Below him, thousands of American troops are sleeping fitfully, praying the bombs don't fall tonight. But Smith knows they are coming. He can feel the vibration of the two massive Pratt & Whitney engines of his P-61 Black Widow pulsating through his flight suit, a mechanical heartbeat in the void. He is not alone, yet he is the loneliest man in the world. Behind him, encased in the specialized radar compartment, sits Flight Officer Philip Porter, his face bathed in the eerie, ghostly green glow of the oscilloscope. They are hunting ghosts, but these ghosts are made of aluminum and steel, carrying high explosives destined for the Allied airfields below. For years, the Japanese Imperial Navy has owned the night, believing that darkness is an impenetrable shield, a cloak of invisibility that protects them from the wrath of American air power. They are wrong. Tonight, the darkness is not a shield, it is a trap. And Major Smith is the spider sitting at the center of the web. This is not just a story of a dogfight. It is the story of how technology and human courage collided to shatter the myth of the invisible enemy. To understand the sheer weight of this moment, we must rewind the clock and look at the desperate, bloody chessboard of the Pacific Theater in late 1944. The United States had returned to the Philippines, fulfilling General Douglas MacArthur's famous vow. The invasion of Leyte was complete, but the fight was far from over. The next stepping stone was Mindoro, a critical island that would provide the air bases necessary to cover the invasion of Luzon. The stakes could not be higher. If the Americans could hold Mindoro, the liberation of Manila was inevitable. If they failed, the entire Pacific strategy would crumble, prolonging the war by years and costing hundreds of thousands of lives. The Japanese High Command understood this perfectly. Desperate, cornered, and losing air superiority during the day, they shifted their tactics. They launched the kamikaze suicide attacks, terrifying and fanatic. But they also ramped up a more traditional yet equally deadly strategy: relentless night bombing raids. Every night, under the cover of a moonless sky, Japanese bombers, Bettys, Helens, and Sallies, would drone over American positions, dropping their payloads on airfields, fuel depots, and sleeping barracks. It was psychological warfare as much as physical. The Marines on the ground called it Washing Machine Charlie, the engine sound that wouldn't let you sleep. The constant fear of death raining down from an empty black sky. Conventional fighters like the P-51 Mustang or the F-4U Corsair were masters of the daylight. But at night, without visual references, they were blind. A pilot could fly right past an enemy bomber and never know it. The Japanese pilots, trained in rigorous night navigation, felt untouchable. They believed the night belonged to the Emperor, but they hadn't accounted for American ingenuity. They hadn't accounted for the Northrop P-61 Black Widow. The P-61 was a beast of a machine. The first American aircraft designed from the very first sketch, specifically as a night fighter. It was a twin-engine, twin-boom monster, painted a sinister glossy black to dissolve into searchlights. It was armed to the teeth with 4 20mm cannons in the belly and 4.50 caliber machine guns in a dorsal turret. But its most dangerous weapon didn't fire bullets. It fired radio waves. Housed in the nose was the SCR-720 radar, a technological marvel of the 1940s. This radar could see through clouds, rain, and absolute darkness, projecting a picture of the airspace onto a small scope for the radar operator. It turned the P-61 into a flying sniper, capable of stalking prey that didn't even know it was being hunted. Major Carroll C. Smith, commanding officer of the 418th Night Fighter Squadron, knew the capabilities of his machine, but he also knew its limits. The radar was temperamental, the aircraft was heavy, and fuel was always a concern. On this specific night, the Japanese decided to send a massive wave. Intelligence reports and ground-based radar indicated a formation of 12 enemy aircraft inbound, 12 against 1. The odds were suicidal, but Smith didn't hesitate. As he throttled up the engines on the chaotic, dust-choked runway of the Hammer Field, he wasn't thinking about the odds. He was thinking about the men on the ground. The mission began with a deceptive calm. Cruising at altitude, the world was a vacuum. No lights below, no stars above. Just the instrument panel and the static in the headset. Then, the voice of Philip Porter broke the silence, calm and professional. Contact, range 5 miles, bearing 120. The game was on. The SCR-720 had picked up a blip, a Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber. The Betty was the workhorse of the Japanese bomber fleet, possessing long range and a heavy payload, but it was notoriously fragile, earning it the grim nickname the one-shot lighter, because its fuel tanks tended to explode when hit. But Smith couldn't see it yet. He had to trust Porter blindly. Starboard, 10 degrees, range closing, 3 miles, 2 miles. Smith made the gentle corrections, his eyes straining against the darkness. It requires a specific kind of madness to fly a plane at 300 miles per hour toward a target you cannot see, trusting only a glowing green line on a screen behind you. This is the intersection where man and machine must fuse completely. Before we dive into the violence of the intercept, I want to ask you a question. In this situation, what do you think is the critical factor for survival? Is it the advanced technology of the radar? Or is it the raw instinct and trust of the pilot? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, because what happens next tests both to the breaking point. Suddenly, a shadow blotted out a patch of stars, a silhouette, visual contact. Smith closed the distance rapidly, bringing the Black Widow in right behind the Betty's tail. He was so close he could see the exhaust flames from the enemy's engines. The Japanese crew had no idea death was hovering 50 yards behind them. Smith flipped the safety covers off his firing buttons. He squeezed the trigger. The P-61 shuddered violently as the 4 20mm cannons unleashed a stream of high explosive shells. The sound was deafening. a jackhammer tearing through the fuselage. The effect was instantaneous. The round sawed into the right wing root of the Betty. There was a bright, blinding flash as the fuel tanks ignited. The bomber didn't just crash, it disintegrated in midair, turning into a falling comet of burning gasoline and debris. One down. But the explosion had a side effect. It ruined Smith's night vision. For a few seconds, he was flying blind again, spots dancing in his eyes. But there was no time to recover. Contact! Another one! 3 o'clock high! Porter shouted. The sky was full of them. Smith banked the heavy fighter hard to the right, feeling the G-forces press him into the seat. The P-61 was a large aircraft, often compared to a flying boxcar. But in the hands of a master like Smith, it danced. He leveled out, pursuing the second target, an Irving, a fast, twin-engine reconnaissance bomber. This pilot was sharper. He realized he was being tracked. The enemy plane began to weave, diving and climbing, trying to break the radar lock. This is where the genius of the Black Widow came into play. The SCR-720 radar could track targets even in ground clutter. Porter called out the evasive maneuvers before the Japanese pilot even finished executing them. "He's diving, Major. Drop 500 feet. Smith pushed the yoke forward, the engine screaming as the props bit into the humid air. He caught the Irving at the bottom of its dive. Again, the cannons roared. The Irving's fuselage ripped open and the plane spiraled uncontrollably into the jungle below, exploding on impact. 2 kills. The adrenaline was pumping now, a chemical cocktail of fear and focus. But a new enemy was creeping into the cockpit. Fuel consumption. Dogfighting consumes fuel at an astronomical rate. Full throttle, aggressive maneuvering, and climbing eat up gasoline faster than you can imagine. Smith checked his gauges. The needles were dropping. He had enough to go home, or enough to hunt. But leaving meant the remaining bombers would reach the airfield. It wasn't a choice. It was a duty. He swung the nose around again. Target number 3. A Helen bomber. This one fought back. As Smith approached, the rear gunner of the Helen opened fire. Tracer rounds zipped past the Black Widow's canopy, looking like angry red hornets. Smith jinked left, then right, ignoring the instinct to retreat. He lined up his shot, ignoring the tracers, and walked his fire along the Helen's fuselage. Smoke, then fire, then the slow, deadly arc toward the ocean. 3 kills in less than 20 minutes. This was becoming historic. In the annals of aerial warfare, becoming an ace, 5 kills, usually takes months. Smith was more than halfway there in half an hour. But the night wasn't done with him. The 4th kill was a blow of efficiency. Another Betty bomber that never saw him coming. But as the debris from the 4th victim rained down, Porter's voice changed. It wasn't the calm tone of the radar operator anymore. It was urgent. "Major, check your fuel." Smith looked. It was critical. They had been running at high combat power for too long. The gauges were flirting with the red zone. Common sense, regulations, and survival instinct all screamed, "Go home. Land. You've done enough. You saved countless lives." But then, Porter called out one last contact. "Small blip. fast mover, coming in head on. This wasn't a bomber. Bombers are slow and plodding. This was a fighter. Intelligence would later identify it as a Ki-84, Frank, one of the most advanced Japanese fighters of the war, faster and more maneuverable than the P-61. A night fighter engaging a day fighter in pitch darkness is a suicide mission. The Frank had the agility, Smith had the eyes. The two planes hurtled toward each other at a closing speed of over 600 miles per hour. The Japanese pilot likely saw the exhaust plumes of the Black Widow or was guided by ground searchlights. It was a joust in the dark. Smith knew he couldn't outturn the Frank. He had to outthink him. He utilized the P-61 spoil lines, unique control surfaces that allowed for rapid rolls. As the Frank passed, Smith hauled the Black Widow into a tight turn, straining the airframe to its limits. The rivet joints groaned. If he pulled too hard, the wings would snap. If he pulled too little, the Frank would get on his tail and shred him. He found the sweet spot. The radar locked on. The Frank was trying to loop over for an attack run. Smith anticipated the move. He pulled the nose up, defying gravity, leading the target. He fired a long burst. The 20mm shells caught the Frank in the belly. The Japanese fighter exploded violently, a fireball so close that Smith flew right through the smoke and debris, hearing pieces of the enemy plane clatter against his own fuselage. 5 kills, an ace in a single night. A feat so rare, it is statistically almost impossible. If you are finding this story of aerial dominance inspiring, please take a moment to hit that like button. It helps us bring these forgotten moments of history back to life. But the victory was short-lived. The silence that followed the explosion was broken by a terrifying realization. The fuel gauges were dead. Not low, dead. The needles were resting on the bottom pegs. The engines were still running, sipping the last vapor from the tanks, but flame out was imminent. "Porter, give me a vector to home. Direct. Now," Smith shouted. They were miles out over the water. Gliding a 30,000-pound aircraft into the ocean at night is a death sentence. To make matters worse, the weather had turned. Clouds obscured the moon. And then the final blow. The airfield. As Smith approached the coordinates of Hammer Field, he looked down. Nothing. Total darkness. The base was under red alert due to the raid. All lights were extinguished. The runway lights, the tower beacon, everything was blacked out to prevent Japanese bombing. Smith was flying a fuel-starved brick toward a black hole. He keyed the radio. "Hammer Tower, this is Black Widow 1. Request lights. Repeat, request lights. Emergency fuel." Silence. The radio operator on the ground was hesitant. Turning on the lights invited bombs. But the controller knew Smith was up there. He knew what Smith had just done. He made the call. "Light 'em up." For a brief shining second, 2 rows of dim lights appeared in the jungle below. But just as quickly, they vanished. A Japanese bomber was still in the area and the lights were doused again. Smith was screaming in the cockpit. He had seconds of fuel left. He couldn't go around. He had to land now, in the dark, on a short dirt strip at 100 miles an hour. This is where the training of a night fighter transcends skill and becomes instinct. Smith lined up on where he remembered the lights were. He watched his altimeter unwind. 500 feet, 300 feet. 100 feet. He couldn't see the trees. He couldn't see the ground. He was descending into an abyss. He felt for the ground effect, that cushion of air that builds up under the wings just before landing. He cut the throttles. The P-61 settled. It felt like falling down an elevator shaft. Thump. The wheels slammed into the dirt. The aircraft bounced, shimmied, and roared down the invisible runway. Smith slammed on the brakes, praying he wouldn't run off the end into the ravine. The heavy fighter skidded, groaned, and finally, mercifully, came to a halt. As the prop spun down to a stop, the engine sputtered and died. They hadn't been turned off. They had run out of gas. A mechanic later checked the tanks and found less than 2 gallons of fuel remaining. 2 gallons. That is the difference between a hero's welcome and a watery grave. Major Carroll C. Smith climbed out of the cockpit, his legs shaking uncontrollably. The ground crew rushed up, cheering, but he could barely hear them. The adrenaline crash was hitting him. He had taken off an unknown pilot. He landed a legend. In the span of roughly 60 minutes, he had destroyed 5 enemy aircraft, broken the back of the Japanese night offensive over Mindoro, and proven the lethal efficiency of the P-61 Black Widow. But the numbers, 5 kills, 4 bombers, 1 fighter, only tell half the story. The real story is the integration of man and technology. The SCR-720 radar didn't win the battle. Smith and Porter did. The radar was just the tool. The mind was the weapon. This mission, often overshadowed by the larger battles of Iwo Jima or Okinawa, was a turning point. It proved that the United States Air Force owned the night. The psychological impact on the Japanese was devastating. They realized that there was no sanctuary, no time of day or night when they were safe from American guns. The darkness was no longer their ally. It had been conquered by the Black Widow. The legacy of this night extends far beyond 1944. The tactics developed by Smith and the night fighter squadrons laid the groundwork for modern air combat. Today, all air combat is essentially night fighting, conducted beyond visual range, relying on sensors, radar, and trust in the machine. Every F-22 or F-35 pilot today owes a debt to the pioneers who first dared to fly blind into the void, trusting a green line on a flickering screen. Major Smith's night of terror and triumph reminds us that in war, technology is useless without the courage to push it to its absolute limit. It reminds us that sometimes the difference between life and death is a few gallons of fuel and a split-second decision. It is a testament to the cold, hard mathematics of survival and the burning human will to protect one's brothers in arms. If you want to uncover more tactical breakdowns of the battles that shaped our world, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell right now. We have a documentary coming up on the disastrous torpedo failures of early 1942 that you absolutely cannot miss. Join us and let's keep history alive.